morning. Dana Sievertson and Agnes Wojciechowski here from the Prospect Heights Natural Resources Commission. Today we're at the Commonwealth Edison conversion prairie, and the reason it's conversion is because this was all formerly mowed turf grass and we turned it into 4.5 acres of prairie. So we're going to look at the west side here, and then we're going to turn around and go and look at the east side. So here's the startup. This shows Agnes out in the field there. She's laying out quadrant sampling. So you want to tell them what a quadrant is?
Quadrat, yeah. So my friend Isa Rydlinski came to help me. So we sampled the initial vegetation that was here. Basically, you lay out a meter quadrat, and we chose 30 locations within the site to sample the vegetation. So we went through every single plant that was in that quadrat to see what we had when we started, and we've been sampling every 2 years since then to see the progress and to see how the vegetation is changing over the years.
Okay, so it started when the Park District herbicided the entire plot. They came out with a boom sprayer. You see Agnes there in the driver's seat, or the passenger seat, and they sprayed the entire thing. The turf grass died, and then we were getting ready to plant, and a few days before, Agnes realized there's too much thatch there. So she hired Horscher Brothers to come out and remove all the thatch. They came out with these brush machines, swept it into big piles like this, and then they came out with dump trucks.
8 truckfuls.
8 truckfuls of thatch.
And that was important because we needed good seed-soil contact, because the way that we recreated this was by putting down seeds, over 80 pounds of seed.
Mm-hmm. So this was on the morning of December the 7th in 2014. This is what it looked like when we started. Agnes had flagged out rows in the field so that people who were putting down the seed could keep track of where they were. And we had 30 volunteers come out and put down how many pounds of seed initially?
80 pounds.
80 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And this was 50 pounds that was purchased with the ComEd Green Regions grant money, and then 30 pounds that we additionally collected on top of that.
So the rest is basically the history of what happened here and how long it took. This right now we're at 9 years into the project. It's really robust. You'll see probably over 70 species of native plants, mm-hmm. and we're very happy with the progress. So let's take a tour.
Okay.
So we're going to have Agnes tell you what some of these plants are as we walk through the path.
Okay, yes. So this plant over here, this is cup plant. Cup plant, and the reason it's called cup plant is because it has a perfoliate leaf over here which collects water. So it's really important for wildlife, and it's a silphium.
Here's some rattlesnake master.
All right, here's some rattlesnake master.
Eryngium jacifolium.
Eryngium jacifolium, right.
A couple of different varieties of goldenrod.
Right, right. Some of that is tall goldenrod, and then the other one is grass-leaved goldenrod. So this one is called grass-leaved goldenrod because it has very thin leaves. That's one of the way that you can tell it apart from the other goldenrods, and it has what's called sort of a flat-topped inflorescence right there.
As we walk through here, if you look on the flowers of these plants, on just about anywhere, any plant, you'll see hundreds of pollinators, all kinds of pollinators. And that's one of the truly fascinating things about coming here. You can walk through these mow paths, and as you can see, the foliage is up around shoulder height, and it gives you a perfect view of the flower and the activity on the flower. It's actually pretty amazing to watch. There's a lot of native bumblebees that are here. There's a lot of honeybees. There's a lot of wasps. There's a lot of other pollinators.
One of the other plants that's in here, this is what's called the gray-headed coneflower. Some people call it the yellow coneflower, Retivita pinnata. That's another nice native plant. And then this is bee balm, Monarda fistulosa, or also called wild bergamot. And actually bumblebees love this plant a lot. So it's another nice prairie plant there.
Coreopsis.
Yes, this is the tall coreopsis. And it's got this leaf, it's trifoliate leaf, and it can get that tall, so like 9 feet tall. Coreopsis tripteris, the tall coreopsis. And this is a plant that isn't flowering yet, but it will in about a month. And this is New England aster. And one way you can tell is because it has clasping leaves. So the leaves hug the stem. So you could tell this all year round without it flowering. But it's really pretty purple flowers with a yellow center in about a month. This is another nice plant. This is Liatris pycnostachya. So this is prairie blazing star. Some people call it gay feather as well. And it's a typical prairie species. In the aster family. Oh, that's another nice little sunflower. This is the downy sunflower, Helianthus mollis, and it's really fuzzy. The stem, the leaves, everything's very soft and fuzzy. This is a nice little prairie plant too.
You see this tall plant here that's coming up and getting ready to bloom. This prairie dock.
Right.
And it's an interesting plant. If you feel those leaves, it doesn't matter how hot it is, they're cold. And it's because the roots go down so far that it's pulling up cold moisture. And the plant is cold all the time. You can see there's a lot of tall goldenrod in here too. We're part of a study, and you'll see that on the east section. We're part of a study now for looking for ways to control tall goldenrod. It is a native plant, but it can be very aggressive and sort of take over and create a monoculture. So we work on that a lot. But it's nice to be part of this study.
Right. And this one here, this is a nice native grass. It can actually get much taller than this. This is big blue stem, also known as turkey foot, because it has the way that the seed heads are arranged, kind of can look like a turkey's foot. And it can get up to 7-8 feet tall. Rosinweed. Yeah, so this is another native prairie plant, another one of the silphiums, rosinweed, Silphium integrifolium. And one of the ways you can tell, the first thing I did was walk up to it and touch it, is that the leaves are very sandpapery. So it's another silphium, just like the cup plant and just like the prairie dock. And there's one last silphium because there's 4 of them that we'll see here. Yeah, this is bone set. It's another plant that's here. Nice stand of tall coreopsis right there. And of course our common milkweed. And there's a lot of these guys here, but you can see there's a caterpillar on it. There's a monarch caterpillar on the milkweed. And so monarch caterpillars can only feed on milkweed plants. That is their larval food source. They cannot feed on any other plant. So if you do not have a milkweed, you won't have monarch caterpillars. There's probably a couple more on here. And this is the compass plant, the 4th silphium. So you can't really see the leaves, but they're very dissected or licineate, and that's why this is Silphium licineatum. And people say that the leaves orient themselves north to south, and that when settlers came, they could tell direction by compass plant. But it's another nice silphium. It actually looks like it's going to seed already. This plant over here is the sawtoothed sunflower. It's another Helianthus. And it has a waxy bloom that you can rub off with your fingers. That's one of the identifying characteristics, and a pretty purple stem.
If you notice, all the flowers, even the ones that are buds, are orienting, in the silphiums, are orienting themselves towards the direction of the sun. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So one of the issues here at the prairie is that there's a lot of invasive shrubs and trees surrounding the prairie, such things like buckthorn and calorie pear, and those seeds end up here and then they start growing and taking over. One of the important things that we do to minimize that is we burn the prairie as often as possible, and that reduces the woody vegetation. We've also had ComEd has hired Stantec on several occasions to come here and to manage the woody invasive species.
You notice as we get down here in the far west end that the vegetation is much shorter than where we started. It's drier down here is the only thing we can figure out, right, Agnes?
Yes.
So it's a little bit drier, so there's less moisture available. You can see there's also a real increase of rattlesnake master in the population of the plants. Really loves it down at this end.
Yeah, and for some reason, this is the most diverse area of the site. When we've done the quadrat sampling, this is the area that has the most species per quadrat, and it's the furthest along from the rest of the site. Could also be too that we put this is where we started when we put down seed. It's possible that the volunteers put down a lot of seed here, and so yeah, but there's liatris in there all throughout. Rattlesnake master, different goldenrods, the gray-headed coneflower, compass plant, prairie dock, big blue stem, little blue stem, the other grass that's in here, Indian grass. This is another native grass. It's called switchgrass, Panicum virgatum, and the seed heads are arranged in an inflorescence called a panicle. So that's where it gets its name from. Switchgrass. I wanted just to show the prairie cinquefoil. This is already going to seed. It was flowering a nice white flower previously, but this already has hundreds of little seeds that we'll be collecting very soon, so we could increase the population of the prairie cinquefoil. And those are just the seeds from one of these capsules, from one plant. So that's a nice little plant. Seed collection season already started. We've been collecting for a while. And then this is this invasive calorie pear that I mentioned. So this is an invasive small shrub that is actually still sold in the nursery trade. And there's several trees over here of this calorie pear, and it just keeps coming in and invading. So that's one of the things that we have to manage here in the prairie, is this calorie pear.
Okay, so this is the ComEd beehives, and they have two supers of beehives. These are managed by Aviol as a part of ComEd's education program. And then on either side of the hives you have native bee hotels. So Agnes is going to go pull the drawer on the...
And see if what we can find in there.
On the one on
Let
the
me get
left.
out of the way of the honeybee.
If you look in there on the right hand side,
Yeah, you can see so wasps did that. They plugged that little
so
hole.
the wasp lines those tubes with grass and crickets.
Grass and
So
crickets,
the
and
larvae
there's
have food when they emerge.
right, and I believe that's larva in there.
So there you have an example of the phrase "busy as a bee."
I wonder if the other one has anything too. I'm gonna go open those up. It's really neat because this represents what is up here as well. So these holes that are plugged in up there, the same thing is going on inside of those tubes. That drawer just allows you to see what's going on inside. So it's pretty neat.
All right, so now we're going to enter the east side here and take a walk towards Elmhurst Road.
All right. Here's another common milkweed, and it's already also going to seed. So these are the seed pods forming. And the seed pods are really cool inside. I'll just show you the seeds forming in here. So all of these little seeds eventually turn dark. These are hundreds of little seeds in the seed pod, and they're attached to this fluffy appendage that allows the seeds to fly through the sky and find new homes in other places. These are very immature, that's why they're white. When they're mature seeds, they're very dark. Oh yeah, so right, so this is prairie dock. prairie dock, and you can really see the large leaves at the base. And it's these leaves that are always cold to the touch. And they really are cold to the touch. It can be 100 degrees and the leaves are cool to the touch because of the deep root system.
So really this area is just mostly the purple and the yellow flowers, pretty much?
Yeah, I mean the flowers, you know, that there were other things flowering here earlier on. You can't really see them because now they're going to seed. So about a month ago this was all white. So it was all white and it was all full of penstemon, so foxglove, beard, tongue. And then
The golden Alexanders have gone too.
the golden Alexanders was flowering earlier on. Black-eyed Susan was flowering earlier on. I mean, see, like the black-eyed Susan is over there. It's already went to seed, so it's very dark. And if you look, you can't really see it. You have to look for it. But what's flowering right now, that's what you really turn your vision to. But there's about 70 species of plants here, just flowering all at different times.
What is this here?
This is all tall goldenrod. So this is the one that turns aggressive. And so you can see how it's sort of formed this colony. It's colony forming. So instead of having, 50 different plants here, you have this tall goldenrod. It's very aggressive. And so we have partnered with other organizations to do a study to see how we can minimize this. And so one of the techniques that people use is to cut it. So you clip it or cut it or mow it, and that sets it back. And that's what we do around a lot of the sites with volunteers, so it sets it back, and then you can see in between here, like there's other plants, like there's Monarda in here and gray-headed coneflower in here. There's a lot of other plants that are trying to come back up, but this is just a very aggressive plant. So that's one method. So out in Barrington, they've been using a dodder that's hemiparasitic on tall goldenrod. And so that's another method that has been tried. Some people actually come in and herbicide it, but over a large area that would be very difficult to do. So we've been mostly cutting it. And so
native or?
It's native. It's native. It's just very aggressive, especially in this region. Hey, Dana, what else are they doing with what are the 8 test plots? You were here with them.
Yeah. All right, so you have
Wait, hold on.
a control.
Right.
Where there's nothing being done. First of all, there's 8 locations, and then each location has roughly a 5-meter circle that goes around the center post that defines the area. So it starts out with a quadrat sampling of in all 4 directions out from the center to see what's actually there, so you can get a sort of a baseline of the area. And then there's different treatments on each one of the 8 sections. So one is a control.
Which is no treatment.
No treatment. One is just mowed. One is mowed with herbicide. One is has an application of dodder. One is looking to control it with wood betony. Mm-hmm. And then one is a combination of wood betony and dodder together.
And then I think a couple of them are also with overseeding.
Yes, overseeding,
Mm-hmm.
right.
Yes.
So it's a 3 to 5 year study.
Right.
So it just started, and you'll see evidence of that up here.
Mm-hmm. We'll see the stakes. Okay. The flag is over here because there used to be a very bad invasive plant species here, poison hemlock, and so it can be difficult to find in 4.5 acres. So we put a flag here to know where to find it, and so it's been taken care of. And this is Indian grass that's just coming out of its sheath, and it's got this beautiful golden color. It's actually pollinating right now. So that's Indian grass, another nice prairie grass. Sorghastrum nutans. And here's a nice stand of, so this is the tall goldenrod, which is the aggressive one. But then over here, this is the grass-leaved goldenrod. It's got a bunch of little beetles on it, and that's flowering. Just hundreds of pollinators everywhere.
This is one of the areas where we actually clipped a couple of years ago, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that's the difference that it makes. Gives other species a chance to come in. So each one of these posts that you see sticking up out of the prairie is one of the sites, and each one has a treatment that's going on. They're color-coded, they're numbered, they're registered. This is one where the task was to mow it. So everything in that circle was cut down.
Yes, so this is just information about the goldenrod study site for people who are coming by and they notice the changes. And so it basically talks about the different treatments that are going to be employed to see how we can better control the tall goldenrod. Yeah, and Jeff Weiss is leading the study. One other thing I wanted to point out is these trees over here. So this is calorie pear, Bradford pear, and this is actually widely sold in the nursery industry. They're beautiful flowers in the springtime, but it's a very invasive tree. And so it really just spreads its berries into the prairie. This site over here has been completely almost taken over by the calorie pear. We've been working on it every single year we come through here. And you'll see, like over here, calorie pear, and then it's just all through here. This calorie pear, and every couple of years it starts to get taller. We have to cut it down, we have to come in and herbicide it. It's really important for the prairie to be burned too, but this invasive tree is just really difficult to take care of, and it's all because of these guys, the moms, over here on the side of the prairie. So this is a very early flowering New England aster, and so it has the clasping leaves, and so beautiful purple flowers with a yellow center. So that's New England aster, Aster novae angelae, and right next to it is a plant that's exactly the same, just not flowering yet. So in this plant, there's hundreds of them throughout the prairie. So if you come back in about a month, you'll just see that purple everywhere. But I mean, look at the calorie pear. It's just unbelievable. There's just a stand of calorie pear here. It's just really horrible how it takes over. There's a baby tree. There's a baby tree. I mean, I could probably pick out 20 baby trees.
And ComEd manages those.
Yeah. So burning helps, but not always. You know, it doesn't. Sometimes it's not enough. I mean, ideally, I eliminate the source, right? Like take out the trees. But that's difficult to convince people to do. Daisy fleabane.
Fleabane?
It's fleabane. Mm-hmm.
This section still has a lot of Eurasian grass in it.
No, that's all that's not from here. Most of all the turf grass is not native, basically. Kentucky bluegrass is not from Kentucky. Most of it is from Europe or Asia. And so turf grass is, it doesn't support any wildlife. There's nothing that feeds on it. And this is what the field was, but prior to us trying to convert it into something more native.
So when this was burned, we put down seed here. So eventually that stuff will come up and
right, and it's going to outcompete the turf grass.
Yep.
What mostly wins, invasives or natives? Like
invasives. Invasives. If you didn't do something, the whole thing would be calorie pear. Invasives completely take over.
They take over.
They take over. They eliminate other native things, and you know, invasives they come from other places. So ecologically or evolutionarily, they don't have anything here that feeds on them. There's no diseases here. Like in Europe and Asia, you know, they evolved with their own insects that feed on them, with diseases, viruses, fungal infection, you know, all sorts of things that kept it in check. But when they come over here, they don't have the same diseases, so nothing keeps those plants in check. And when you don't keep them in check, they start to become stronger, and they change, and they change their habits and become more aggressive. So like buckthorn and calorie pear. Buckthorn, you know, some of these plants weren't invasive 50 years ago. You know, they weren't. They were still kind of just hanging out. But once they start taking over like that, that's bad. Yeah.
So being invasive, do they finally adapt to our diseases here, and will that kill them, or will they?
No, they don't. They still don't have those diseases. Sometimes they even acquire qualities to be able to kill other things. Like for instance, buckthorn. Buckthorn has a chemical that's secreted into the soil that doesn't allow other things to grow around it, and so they still don't have their diseases from back home, and so they become just completely aggressive and take over. So they have to be managed. Invasives have to be managed.
So even though they could be here 50 years, nothing will still kill them unless you...
Right.
take care of them yourself.
Yes. Yeah. So, for instance, let's say 50 years ago, calorie repair wasn't invasive. Well, so that would mean that those trees would just be there and they wouldn't spread throughout the whole prairie and there wouldn't be a million little seedlings everywhere, you know? But it acquired the ability to be able to spread very aggressively. And so now it's become invasive. It's been put on the invasive species list. And most people who manage natural areas know which species are invasive and which ones need to be managed. Yeah.
When last year, Patrick, before they burned it, this whole area was just one giant infestation. ComEd came in with a top-down mulching mower and took everything down to about 2 feet, which topped off all the calorie pairs. And then the summer interns came out and herbicided every single one for what, a day and a half, something like that. So that really set it back from where it is now. But you can see now it's, especially in the margins, where there isn't so much competition, it's liking it.
This is really interesting. So this wasn't here last year. I just love these interesting little finds when you walk through. Like, it's very strange, but this is all stiff sunflower, but it's like a field of stiff sunflower. And it's just strange because, I mean, we didn't put these plants here all in a big colony, but they sort of just formed this really nice colony of native plant. It's really interesting.
Everything is, all the flowers have rotated towards the
Yeah.
sun.
So swallowtail butterflies, they also have a host plant that they feed on, and that is everything in the parsley or the carrot family. So things that are in the parsley or the carrot family are things like this Queen Anne's lace, and then you can tell that it's in the parsley family, or what used to be called the umbelliferae, because it forms these umbels of flowers. So if you look underneath, you could see that it's sort of like an umbrella, like little spokes, and each one of these forms its own umbel. So this is an umbel of umbels, and this is what makes it part of the carrot or parsley family. And so swallowtails can only feed on plants in this family. And there's many plants that are in this family, not just this Queen Anne's lace. But the adult will lay the eggs on the plant, and the eggs will hatch, and then the larvae feed on the leaves of the plant. And if these plants aren't around, like if there's no Apiaceae or none of these carrot parsley family plants, then they can't feed. So it's really interesting. Just like the monarch has the milkweed, the swallowtail has things in the Apiaceae, and there's just tons of insect associations where the insect needs a certain particular plant to either feed on or during its larval stage. And so you just think that more biodiversity, the more different plant species you have, the many more insects you can have too, because each one has a distinct need. But it's almost always on native plants, not plants that have been brought from elsewhere. So something that's kind of interesting about flowers, which people might not think about, is when we look at a flower, most people look at the whole entire thing as a flower, but it's actually not true, which I was interested to find out. This flower is made up of 100 little tiny flowers. So inside these are called disc flowers over here. Each one of these is its individual flower, individual male and female parts. These over here, these are ray flowers. Ray flowers. So each one of these is its own flower. And some things in the sunflower family, sometimes they form the seeds inside, sometimes outside, or the whole thing is seeds. So each one of these flowers up here at the outside becomes a seed down here. Let me just show you real quick. See, these are all seeds that have formed. Oh, yeah. So these are all seeds, little dark seeds of that sunflower. So each flower becomes a seed.
So the seeds you guys collect, you come and spread them out here, or what do you do?
Oh, we spread them everywhere, wherever you need native plants. So wherever, we have new areas sometimes that we work on. Sometimes, yeah, if there's a patch like we saw over there where the turf grass was, we'll probably come in there and reseed it or overseed it. And then there's just all sorts of areas that we put down our seed.
Yeah, and a portion of those will go towards propagation of new potted species. So those will go into the greenhouse program.
Yes.
Half of them will propagate outside, half will propagate in the greenhouse, so that over the course of the growing season, we'll have different rates at different times for the plants to mature, so we can keep up with it.
But we collect over 100 pounds of seed each year. So the greenhouse program is only like maybe 1% of all the seeds that we collect. 99% of the seeds that we collect, we spread out on the ground. And now that takes a while though. It takes several years for the native species to come in. Sometimes it can take 2 or 3 years for them to germinate as well. And then there's all sorts of things that happen with competition of plants. So like for instance, this whole area for the first 2 years, it was all weeds. It was all weeds, it was all annual weeds, it was all things, pioneer weeds. It took several years for the seeds to grow, mature, and then outcompete the weeds. So it takes time with seeds. It's a much more instant gratification with plants that you grow in the greenhouse and then you water them. It's very showy that way and comes in right away. But if you do it from seed, it takes several years. So I wanted to point out this, see how this is bent over. So basically this was a flower, and there's a little insect that's associated with the silphium specifically. I think it's a weevil, and it comes in and it does that to the flowers. But it's also part of its larval phase. It's part of its, reproductive cycle. So sometimes it'll take off these flower heads, but it leaves a lot of them too. Oh, here's another stand of that stiff sunflower. I find that really interesting. I mean, we've been coming here for 9 years, and for 9 years it hasn't done that. And then this year, it's like forming these nice little colonies.
Yeah, it's really beautiful.
It is beautiful. But it's interesting how, I don't know. So there's something new every single year. What's going on over there, that center area?
I don't know, but I think
it looks like
it looks like those sunflowers again. I think that's an area that Peter might have sprayed.
It is, all that stiff sunflower. That's so strange.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like a colony of stiff sunflower. Interesting, very interesting. I'll take stiff sunflower over tall goldenrod any day.
Yeah. Any day.
Oh, another interesting thing about it is that this one, okay, so this is not a native plant, but it's a plant that is ubiquitous, meaning it's kind of everywhere. It's naturalized, so that means it has become part of our kind of, I guess, ecosystem, sort of say, right? And but it's not invasive. So this is like an example of a plant that is not native, but it's also not invasive. So like we don't mind it, and I think everybody kind of grew up with this plant, right, with Queen Anne's lace. But an interesting thing is that sometimes the flowers have a little red flower in the center. This one does. It has just that center flower is red. And so the story goes that it's been called Queen Anne's lace because Queen Anne was, making lace or something, and she pricked her finger and a little drop of blood fell on the lace. That's the story. Plants have all sorts of stories.
If you look back this way, I mean, you get another sort of perspective on just how massive this thing is. There's a swallowtail flying around up there.
Yeah, the life that's in this prairie is so unbelievably diverse and really special, and the life that you find in turf grass is like none. Ooh, now that's a cool plant right there. Look at that ironweed. I don't know what the best way to get the sun on it, but that's a really nice plant. It likes it typically a little wetter. This area is a little wetter.
This section is wet.
Yeah, it is wet.
The whole prairie, if you look back up, you see that it pitches down this way towards this tower.
Right.
So all the runoff comes eventually this way.
Right.
So this area is sort of wetter, and you see a lot of different stuff here.
Yeah, you see species that like it a little wetter. We'll actually walk over there and you can see some of those species.
There's some more ironweed over there.
Yeah, there's some more ironweed. And then we have this beautiful senna, one of my favorite plants. This is wild senna, Senna hebecarpa, and it's just a gorgeous plant. It also likes it a little bit wetter, and so this area is perfect for it. There's several plants out there that have already flowered, and they already have their seed capsules forming. So it's really cool how this forms its seeds.
There's some obedient plant.
Oh yeah, an obedient plant. You have to see the obedient plant. It's really cute.
It's a very unique story.
Yes, obedient plant. So plants are so interesting, they really are. So this is obedient plant, Physocegia, and this is the prairie obedient plant. And the reason it's called obedient is because if you take the flower, you can move it over. See, and it stays. So when you move the flower, it stays where you put it, and so that's why it's called obedient plant.
Wow.
Isn't that cool? And then this one, oh, look at the seed capsules of this senna, right? Do you see this? So those flowers eventually become these seed capsules, which we're going to be collecting so that we can have more of this plant in other areas that are a little wet. That's another important thing to know where you put down your seed. You have to know the requirements of the plant. So you have to know that, for instance, swamp milkweed, which this is, swamp milkweed, it's another beautiful milkweed, likes it a little bit wetter than the common milkweed and the other milkweeds. And then another plant that likes it a little bit wetter is this right here. This is cordgrass. So here's cordgrass. And if you look at that inflorescence, there's no other grass that does that. And it also gets really super tall, and it likes a little bit moist, wetter area. And there's an interesting story with this one too. So cordgrass is also known as ripgut. And the reason it's called ripgut is because the sides of the blade of the grass are very serrated like a knife. So if I were to run my finger down this side of the blade very quickly, I would cut myself basically. And so there's stories that when the settlers, the pioneers came through riding on their horse-drawn wagons throughout the prairies of Illinois, because we remember that most of Illinois was covered in prairies, the horses, the grass would go underneath the bellies of the horses and literally rip the skin open, and that's why it's called ripgut. It's kind of a sad story, but apparently a true story. Oh, there's one, hold on, there's one more over here. Sorry, I mean, this is monkey flower. This little guy right here is monkey flower. It's another cute little native, monkey flower. And that likes it in little wetter areas as well, which is where it is here. Okay, so you see this guy right here. This guy right here. This is an invasive plant. So this is teasel. Now you see only one over here. You're like, well, it doesn't look very invasive because there's only one. But trust me, if we were to not herbicide this one plant over here, which it has been, so it didn't go to seed, each one of those has thousands of seeds, and this would release maybe 50,000 seeds all around, and we could come back here next year and you would see 1,000 teasels. And you would come back the year after that and you would see 10,000 teasels. And certain areas, teasel is the only plant there because it's taken over completely. And it forms these little basal rosettes that just exclude all the other plants, and it's a very bad invasive plant. So it was really, we walk through here all the time to check for these things. And so when we found that one plant, we got rid of it because that one plant can just take over the whole thing. So it's important to scout, it's important to find these invasive species and take care of them right away.
Where's it from?
Where's it from? Europe. A lot of invasive species are from what's collectively known as Eurasia, which is either from Europe or Asia, which is really far away. And so it doesn't have those natural predators, it doesn't have the predators that it does back home, and it's a very invasive species.
And at Christmas time, some people spray paint them gold and silver.
And put them into vases. So, interestingly also is that there's certain species are more prevalent here. One of those is rattlesnake master. Another one is that bee balm that we've been seeing, New England aster, gray-headed coneflower. There's probably around 8 to 10 species that are very abundant. And part of the reason is those were the seeds that we collected from our remnant prairie. And that prairie is located pretty much, if you follow the bike path all the way down, about another 2 miles. It's right near the railroad tracks. So volunteers collected the seeds of these native plants that we found just a few miles down, and that's why a lot of those seeds you can see here. So every single rattlesnake master came from a seed that was collected at the remnant prairie. Every single grassleaf goldenrod came from a seed that volunteers collected at the remnant prairie. Every single monarda or bee balm came from those seeds. So there are certain species here that were hand collected by volunteers, and that's why you see them here now.
Look at the pollinators on this guy. Some of them just look like common houseflies, but they're not. I guarantee you won't see this on your hydrangea.
Oh, here, I can point something out. So this little plant here, right here, this is ragweed, okay? So ragweed, you might recognize the name because a lot of people are allergic to ragweed. So ragweed is actually a native plant But it's very kind of also ubiquitous. So you find it everywhere. It can grow in the side of a crack of or in the crack of a sidewalk. You'll have it in gardens. It's just sort of everywhere. The problem is that this plant is just about to pollinate, and these little pollen granules are wind pollinated. That means that they travel through the air and go into your nose and cause these allergies. So a lot of people have allergies to ragweed. Now people think that it's allergy season when they see yellow, because the ragweed flowers exactly the same time as the yellow flowers. So people mistakenly think that they are allergic to all the yellow flowers and the sunflowers and the goldenrods. But actually goldenrods are pollinated. So you see all those bees going from flower to flower to flower. The pollen doesn't fly through the air. This is not what causes people's allergies. It's the ragweed. It's the ragweed and the grasses that are wind pollinated, and that's what causes allergies.
One of the things that's cool to think about is if you look back on any one of the plants that we looked at and all the hundreds of pollinators on it, and you look at this view and think of how many plants there are and multiply it by the number of pollinators, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, absolutely. And very important to wildlife.
Get this wasp. This is the one with the iridescent blue wings. The cool thing about the pollinators, they don't care about you. They really don't care about you.
No, they don't.
No.
In 9 years of coming here, we've never been stung by a pollinator here.
Look at the compass plant here. See how the leaves are sort of oriented
North-south.
north-south? That's why it's called compass plant.
Okay, so that's the ComEd Conversion Prairie. We've done the east and the west side. Encourage everybody to come out. We were just talking about this. It looks so different from week to week, but season to season changes everything. You can see the pollinators. There's hundreds and hundreds of pollinators. They don't bother you. They're interesting to watch. And it's here in Prospect Heights where nature comes to live.
Yes, thank you.